being here. Thank you, Hashem, for such beautiful weather and such beautiful neshamot. Again, a little louder. Thank you, Hashem. Baruch Hashem. For all the weather, but more importantly, the beautiful neshamot that are here. And wow, Hanukkah just came. And I'm sure you all had an amazing time. So many events here. It's like every day I was getting 7 different invitations for different exciting events here. So this is a place to be in the free land here, like and free to get together and free to enjoy each other. So now that Hanukkah and all the lights were shining, we were thinking like, wow, how can we keep those lights shining? We are a light. We are a light, period. Yeah, sometimes we don't feel it so much. Sometimes we feel the challenges all around us kind of beginning to seemingly snuff out our light. The energy sometimes is not as much there because the appreciation might not be there as much. How much can you give? How much can you do? And sometimes we become a little hidden. So everything that we learned from Hanukkah, hopefully I'll just do a little review, will help us keep shining our light. I always say, keep shining by smiling through it all. One of my main missions in life is to help people not change, to let their light continue to shine no matter what, no matter who, no matter where. We are so godly. We are so beloved to Hashem. And we are in the stage of more and more access to information to help us become more redeemed, to help us be more revealed. And the whole message of the Chanukiah was that the miracle of that little oil that was untainted and no one could destroy and no one could mess with, captured generations and generations of messages of nobody can mess up your light. You are holy, you are wholesome. God is indivisible, He is not divided. That means every one of us has the wholesome, glorious powers of Hashem within us. Sure that our light does continue to shine. It's there. It's just a matter of letting it continuously burn. The menorah actually represents all the mitzvahs, especially prayer. Because without the menorah, again, you have a flicking light with the little wick and a little oil. But without the menorah, I hope everyone can hear me here. Maybe that's okay. I'm not seeing any messages, so I think everyone can hear. Okay. So, Torah and mitzvahs in a precise way helps us shine. So the menorah actually represents us creating a foundation in the beginning of our day so that our godly soul can actually come out of its imprisonment as we wake up. Because when our soul leaves our body, what happens? Our soul goes to the higher worlds, but when we wake up in the morning and it re-enters, our body has become not ready for the soul, basically. So that's why we do Netilat Yadayim in the morning, right by our bedside. And as the Gemara teaches us, it's kind of stationed, believe it or not, in our nose area, waiting to come out. But it can't really come out until we purify also our insides. And that's why prayer is so important in the morning, to be able to allow our godly soul to come out of its imprisonment so that it could dominate our minds. It could find a location in our heart. It could use every body part in a way that's holy and sincere and with humbleness and with love. Without that first foundation of our day, then the animal soul, the part of our existence that actually is very holy, but kind of needs to be harnessed. It needs to be like put a yoke on it. It needs to be trained. It needs to be captured like an ox that can do amazing job in the field, but will not be productive if it's letting itself loose around town, right? So our ox, like energy, which is a powerhouse energy, which is a productive energy, which is actually able to become in partnership with our godly soul, only happens through the experience of the morning prayers. And when we wake up in the morning, if we just allow the godly soul to like be in a slumber state because we didn't purify our body properly, and we didn't purify and make ready our whole mind and heart in harmony, then the animal soul takes over. And when the animal soul takes over, guess what? It runs loose like an ox and can like make us feel depressed, make us feel anxious, make us feel worried, make us feel like we can't handle it, and our light begins to diminish. Our vitality, our for life, our hope, our emunah, like literally washes away. And the day becomes so dark. The Lubavitcher Rebbe taught us that we, the women, have the power to bring out the light in others. That's why we light Shabbos candles. But if we are allowing the day to overtake us, and our light begins to flicker and maybe seemingly disappear, then the others around us begin to follow our suit. And then the others begin to be in that negative mode of energy. So it's so important that we, the women, make sure to do what is necessary to keep our godly spark, our holy light aflame. Now again, if you have, let's say, the menorah, you prayed, and some people, kol hakavod, they work, they have 9-to-5 jobs, and they have like children running around, they have so much to do. But I say to people, try to put an alarm clock to go to bed at a certain time. Go to sleep like a chassid so that you can wake up like a chassid. Because if you're like on the to-do list till 1 a.m, and then you have so little time to really ground yourself in the morning, then it's very difficult to handle the day. So, yes, we need to pray. But guess what? We also need to, sages have taught us that prayer is essential, but what's even more essential after that is to learn Torah. Now, the learning of the Torah actually causes the whole purpose of this, like I call it like an open heart spiritual surgery. Prayer is about opening your heart. It's like putting that fire of the words of Torah to like melt away the barriers of your heart, the pain of yesterday, the disappointment of what happened the other day. It allows the purification of all these like klippas, all these barriers. We're taught we're supposed to circumcise our heart. That's what we're here to do in this world. We're supposed to get rid of the heart's desires of lusting, the heart's desire to be angry, the heart's desire to be nervous and worried. That's our heart. That's our animal soul. That's what we're here to get rid of. And so prayer is that light to melt away these hardened, crusty, like layers on our heart that makes us stone-like, that makes us not full of vitality, not full of willingness to like try again, not willing to forgive, to carry all this in our heart. Prayer helps us release that. And now that we prayed and we opened our heart, we need to fill the oil. The oil of God's wisdom can seep now into our hearts, just like the wick. The oil seeps into the wick, right? It like burns the wick. So the light of Torah now can burn that anger, that sadness, that anxiety. Now, every person has all these midot to fix. But not everyone has the same portion to letaken, to fix. So some people are born with a lot of fire let me tell you, when I had 2 different children in my stomach, and when I diaper changed those 2 children, I saw the difference in one and the other. One was born with more fire, meaning God blessed them with a lot of this temperament to do a tikkun on. And not only to letaken and get rid of it, but to harness that fire in a good and a holy way. So whenever you see someone who's so angry, they're so holy. Because someone above gave them a lot of fire. And once they will harness it, like we talked about, that ox, and channel it, that fire is a driven person. That fire is someone who can have kirish be'esh, like drive. That fire is someone that could have like yirat Hashem. Because fire is gvura. Gvura is strong. But gvura is also yirah. They're the type of person that could be like Yitzhak Avinu, who had so much fire. And he had so much yirat Hashem. Another person that is born with more water elements, they're the type of person that might be very lustful. Always eating, shopping. They're the pleasure-seeking type of personality. That type of person, though, once they harness that water, pleasure-seeking type of personality in prayer, that's where it begins. And then when you bring the light of Torah, then it helps to channel it for the good. So then that water element personality, which is like Avram Avinu, he had such a love for the people, love for Hashem, love, instead of loving the addictions, right? So someone who's very addictive personality, and who's not today with the shefa, with the iPhones, and with all what's going on in the world, we've become so easy for all of us to really access that. But that type of person would be able to really develop a chesed organization. They'll teach Torah, and because they love, like Avram Avinu, the people, and want to help them. So that type of person is so holy and will channel it that way. Another type of person will be born with a more earthy personality. And that type of personality, their light, although when not directed, ends up being depression, sadness, laziness. I can't handle life. So someone who's very depressed, again, so holy because they have a lot of earth. And the earth element channeled in a good and holy way, they're very grounded. They can be earthy. They have a lot of like mental capacity. They have a lot of thinking powers. They have extra faculty of imagination because they can think analytically. They'll develop it and they'll be able to like really harness it. And someone who has a lot of air element is a type of personality that just is a talkaholic. They constantly talk, fight, argue. It's just like, it's in their nature. I one time had like many guests in my home, and even though all experienced a tragedy, each one handled it in a different way. One was sleeping all day long, and the other one was eating all day long. I made like food like this, and in one day it was gone. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to really make more here. And the other one kept talking and talking and talking. I couldn't even say a sentence, and they would just override me. And each one handled their trauma in a different way because of the way their nature has been gifted. But again, unchanneled, not directed in a good and holy way, become booty for the animal soul to take when the person doesn't use these elements in a good and a holy way, beginning their day with creating that vessel to contain all that godly light, to be able to make the vessel ready for the godly soul to come in and take these shining lights and use it in a good way. Otherwise, it's snatched. Otherwise, godly soul is in a slumber state. Otherwise, the animal soul takes it and uses it in a not good way. And then we begin to not shine. And not only not shine, maybe even become not emotionally or mentally well. Where things happen and we become ungrounded, in harmony with all of our elements. So I always say to people, we need to every day go to the spiritual spa for our soul. We need a spiritual chiropractic alignment to align these 4 elements with our godly essence so we can shine. But if we don't do that, we're like privy to the other side deciding that day, you know, how you're going to interact with your loved ones and how you may not tolerate them and or have not as much compassion for the challenge that they may be going through. Or you become so sensitive, so super sensitive when this one said it this way and didn't respect you that way. And it's just a challenging day. How many times so many people have come my way and they can't even begin to like finish the list of everything that everyone is this and not that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, they're so holy. They're not damaged goods. They're not like messed up from whatever. They just didn't learn how to channel their light. We were just talking on the way, Lech Lecha, when Abraham was left to leave his land, it talked about these 3 different things, like of where he was leaving. I mean, wouldn't you think you're going to the promised land or some great place? Talk about, oh, Boca, did you see the parks? Did you see the lakes or whatever? You would talk about what's beautiful in that new place. But the focus was what he was leaving behind. Why? And why 3 different things? And these 3 different things are what could really trick you into believing that you can't shine your light anymore. And the 3 things were the house of your father, which is the traumas of your childhood, the love you may have not gotten. And I always tell people, God created a situation where he put innocent children into the home of imperfect people, because God didn't create us with, to be tzaddikim. We have an animal soul. We have a Yetzer Hara. He created that system. And we're supposed to go through these challenges with our parents or our schools or whatever. It's supposed to be that test to let ourselves know if we're with God, we can leave that behind. It's not going to imprison us. It's not going to taint us. It's not going to snuff out our light. In fact, it's going to be a stepping stone to be able to get us to that next space of elevation. Because of that, I'm a better person. Because I had hardships in my life, I have developed compassion for other people. Because I went through certain things, it really made me a stronger, more faithful person. And when you see it in that way, you can say, Lech Lecha, I can leave my house of my father and go to the real me, the real light, the real godly aspect of who I am inside here. Then it says, leave the birthplace. Wait a minute, you just talked about the home. Why now birth? Well, because birth is your genetic predisposition towards water, fire, earth, or air, whatever temperament God gave you in your birth. It's not your fault. And it's not maybe necessarily because you had a trauma. Even Dr. Twersky says he had the best, perfect childhood. I mean, he was a champion in chess and the best of grades and blah, blah, blah. And in his older years, he realized he has low self-esteem. I saw the video. And he had everything perfect because it's innate in us, in our DNA of our soul, this challenge of the Yetzer Hara and using our elements to like trick us to feel like we're nothing. You can leave that behind because you're going to learn how to channel it, because that's your greatest gift. It seems like your greatest weakness, but it's really your greatest strength. And then the last place that Avram was told to leave behind is your land, Eretz. Well, Eretz also can be used as a terminology of ratzon and also to run. You may have run into certain habits to handle the trauma, to cope with the psychic warfare that's going in your head that can't allow you to sit still and feel comfortable in your own skin. And you escaped and ran into certain habits so that you don't have to deal with the past. And even that we know we can break. Recent research shows us that within 40 days, there's a book by Dr. Melrose who says in like 60 seconds, every day, doing a meditation, calming your doing deep breathing and visualizing, if you want to call it, or you want to call it guided imagery, whatever you want to call it, but like really having that modeh ani moment of like thanking Hashem and seeing a vision of how happy you are and grateful you are, like that you create new neural pathways in your brain and really make the old traumas obsolete, because there's only so much room, right? If you put more positivity, more Torah, more oil into that body, and it's filling up your mind, then there's the old gooky stuff of what happened in your past. It just becomes back and further buried in your brain, and then eventually like obsolete, creating new patterns of behavior that is really, as Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, it's really the real you. It's not like you're getting this second nature. It's not like you have to go to the moon and like, I don't know, if I go to this, taking a spaceship and I'm going to recreate myself somewhere up there. It's all in you. Your positivity is all in you. It's a matter of shedding and a matter of like unveiling, revealing by doing these simple precision in your day-to-day spiritual activities. Again, praying as close as possible to the morning, because you're building a foundation. I tell people, you're going to go to an architect, you're going to make a $20 billion, high rise. You're not going to say, can you save me money and make me a Play-Doh foundation? Make it out of Play-Doh. I don't want to spend the money. I want the chandeliers. I want your morning is your foundation of your whole day. You're opening the door to your godly essence so it could shine. Then, again, you created that space for your godly soul to shine. Now, you have to shine the light of God's wisdom into your heart. Because if you know things, and a lot of people know things, oh boy, they'll know it by heart, and I've seen it. And I'm not trying to like put anyone down, but it's very easy to know things, even to speak about it, but behind closed doors, are you living it? The only way to live knowledge is when you shine the light of your wisdom that Hashem has given you through your engaging in Torah, when it gets to your heart. We know that the heart is a second brain. In fact, I was reading this book, and many years I've been hearing about it, but this whole book is about this. It's so cool. Like people who do surgeries and have a different heart or a different kidney even. And they take upon all the things that the brain of the other knew, and their character traits and their habits, and when they're just doing heart surgery. So our heart is a brain. It stores information. So, but we got to get that godly wisdom into our heart. And the way to do that, and this is the key, most important factor of keeping your light shining, is deep contemplative, whatever you do. When you learn Torah, it's deep, it's contemplative. No, read the words. What are you saying? What is this about? Think about it, contemplate it. Take it to a place, hopefully, of even a vision of it. What does this mean to me if I take this information and I want to make it mine? So I see myself living it in a vision, maybe a few minutes after. Or when you're praying, pay attention to the words. Deep, contemplative. That's why I wrote the prayer meditation book, so that people have the deep Kabbalistic teachings of why you're saying this paragraph and why you're saying this sentence. What is it about for us to do the tikkun? That's the key. But if everything is rushed, you're going to throw that wick on, and who knows, it's going to fly in a tree, and you're going to throw the oil, and who knows, it's going to splatter on the wall, and you're going to throw the vessel flat like that, the menorah. It won't be a light. There needs to be an order and a seder to be able to make that light shine, right? So the same thing. And any problem that anyone has, the saying goes, a half-baked understanding of the problem is a half-baked solution to the problem. We need to know the source of why we're not as much as a light that we want to be. We need to know the full, like, spectrum of reasons. Now, sometimes a person can pray, even deep and meditatively, and they can even learn deep and meditatively, and they have to realize it's a process. Like, we're not here to like, oh, I prayed today, I learned today, that's it, I'm going to be a tzaddik gamur today. No. But at least the battle is a lot less. And at least the next day's battle is even a little less. And sometimes people get to that place and they feel redeemed, and it kind of happened to me, where I finally did the learning and the prayer, and voila! And then like, okay, I'm good. I don't have depression anymore. I don't have this anymore. Woohoo! I'm free. I tell people, you need to eat every day to get your body to function. You can't say, oh, I ate 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago. Can't even say I ate 2 days ago. So your soul needs the oil. It needs the nutrition. It needs the godly energy daily. And not once a day, twice a day, 3 times a day if possible. Yes, we have children. Yes, we have responsibility. Yes, we work. But do we want to live with no energy and no strength to face the day after day? Or do we want to organize our day just a tiny bit better? Even just 5 minutes of a little more prayer. Just maybe 1 minute of a little meditative prayer. And maybe less on Facebook, WhatsApp, I don't know, Instagram, whatever out there. And right away, learn Torah. Because you only have a window of opportunity when your open heart spiritual surgery just took place to fill that light in. If you look at Kuntrus Avoida and Kuntrus Tefillah and so many deep Hasidus teachings of like how even dangerous it is to not learn Torah after prayer. Because so much of the praying aroused all these emotions. If you don't cool it off with the light of Torah, because Torah is like water, and the prayers and the emotions are like a fire. Your heart's on fire, hopefully. But even if not, but the idea is that the Torah cools off the energy of this very strong passion. So it will be harnessed, and it'll be directed, and it'll be in balance. Because how many of us women, and trust me, I know, and I can tell you a story that I don't like to share, but I share it anyway. Because once sometimes you're so inspired and you want so much for your home to be a holy home. You so much want the kids to get along, the husband not to be so strict, and you want so much for the children to, let's say, pray and whatever it is, even if it's not spirituality. You want them to be health nuts, or you want them to be health care conscious, whatever it is. If you're so driven and so on fire with it and you're not in balance, then a lot of arguing, fighting, and the opposite of shalom while trying to be that light for them, ending up causing a friction between you and your children or your spouse or whoever it is in your life that you're trying to be the example. So the learning Torah is critical to harmonize all these energies in a good and holy way. The story, I was in Israel and we made Aliyah, and we were very into the Zionist movement and the army and so my husband at one point said he wanted the kids to play with guns. We had just become Baruch Hashem recently, after 8 years of praying for children, we had our first child. It was like a miracle. And you can imagine, you want to do everything right? Every mother wants to do everything right. And you can imagine, sometimes husband has a complete opposite, opinion of how they want to raise their child compared to how you want to. And I remember like in the beginning of my understanding of all that I've come to understand a little more over the years, wanting to protect my children, not to play with guns. Are you kidding? First of all, I was traumatized as a young child at gunpoint once, and my sister was at gunpoint, and they stole her car in the Pico Roberts scenario. Like, so we had a lot of guns situation. We didn't want guns, and nothing to do even with religion, but it was just like, guns. And my husband was like, no, guns are going to be maybe in the army. He's a boy. He needs to get used to it. He's going to see it all around. And there was arguing, and even in front of my young child, I'd say, no guns. Not a peaceful situation. I learned the Sikha of the Rebbe, and I remember like, oh my gosh, I'm doing this all wrong. And it was a story of Yehuda and Tamar versus the story. The maidservant's bed was next in line. And he was shocked. He was like so hurt. And with rage and with rash and with emotion, he just like took the bed and switched it. Because he says, no, to honor my mother, I'm going to make her next in line. Well, guess what? Rashi says he lost everything. He lost kahuna, being able to be in line with all the priestlyhood of the Beit HaMikdash. He lost malchus, kingship, and he lost his inheritance. Now, fast forward a little bit and see who got all that. And it seems so bizarre because what he did came from his heart. He wanted to honor his mother. It wasn't like, oh, I'm going to do something. Like, how could that happen? Tamar ends up not getting the third husband because two of them died. And she, righteous Tamar, ends up like not wanting to say who the person is that impregnated her. And she like ends up being, dresses up like a harlot. So she'll get the seed from the, from the dynasty of Yehuda. So Yehuda could have said, as she's standing there dangling, the person who is the one, I won't say it. Luckily they didn't have, binoculars and say, oh, that's who. But okay, you can get the point. And he could have said, Zaina, what did you do to me? Like in her head, and shut up and didn't stand up to what was right. He stood up and said, she's right. I didn't give my third son, and this is mine. And he saves her life and the baby's life. Which, by the way, seems very sketchy. Okay, the tzaddikim actually say that no tzaddik could have withstand that test because Hashem plagued him, because the union had to happen in that funky, interesting way. Chassidus teaches us that souls up in Shemayim sometimes have to come down in very interesting ways, because otherwise these high souls can't come down. So he was plagued, but still seems funky compared to, I want to honor my mother. He loses it all, and he gains everything. After he denied the third child, after he, did what he did with Tamar. But because the Lubavitcher Rebbe says it's the last deed that counts. Meaning, if it is in your heart, you want to protect your child so he won't be used to guns, but the last deed is you're arguing, shaming, let's say, your husband that he doesn't know like you know, and making yourself the boss over him and making him feel like he's stupid and you're the smart one, the last deed is what counts. If, let's say, it didn't start from such a good place, an interesting event with Tamar, but the last deed ended up saving a child and a woman's life, that's what counts. So the heart that's shining, the heart that's flaring, that wants to do right by Hashem, that wants, look, she carried her baby how long? She did so much for this husband, or she did so much as an activist in the community. There's so many situations where you can be caught off guard. Because that day, in that one day, you didn't guard yourself and protect yourself by creating that grounded you. That one, how many stories? One thing, done, it happens. How did that happen? Such a good standing person for how long? I know a woman. She, such an amazing person. How much hachnasat orchim she did. How much One day, it's so important. The final act is what's important. Not even if it's right or wrong. In the heart, meaning it's right that you want to honor your mother, but by honoring your mother, you dishonored your father. He's the tzaddik of the generation. He knows. And in fact, the baby was supposed to be born, but because he moved the bed, that baby wasn't born. So sometimes it's such a good reason. I want to, for Hashem. But you're arguing? You're shaming? You're not a light? You know the story with the snake? You remember when Moshe threw the stick on the ground and it turned into a snake, and then, that whole magician thing, but Hashem turned it back into a staff to swallow all the snakes? So most people will think, because that's a greater miracle. Snakes eating snakes, big deal. But the Lubavitcher Rebbe teaches us that the snake, if it swallowed the snake, is a symbolism like you are in a snaky, angry, negative, and you're trying to swallow up their snake. That's not how to do it. Get grounded, get aligned, be like the staff, royalty, calmness, stoic, whatever you want to describe it as. Deal with it with the mind and the heart in harmony. Because if your heart is on fire, and even though the mind says, I want to do it l'shem shamayim, but your fire, or your anger, or your nervousness, or your anxiety takes over, and you deal with the situation, which I sometimes call with a diarrhea of the mouth kind of situation, just and that's what happens if your light isn't shining. If you're not creating that vessel to contain your godly soul, to harness all your 4 elements, to be able to be the true you, to be able to forgive and let go what was, because we carry and it becomes like heavy. And then our light snuffs out. So when I try to tell people, try not to change. What? I come here, I want to be a better person, I want to change. No. You don't want to change. You don't want other people to snuff out your light, so you change. So you become dark. Be the light. Don't change. And that takes work. That takes work every day to feed your soul, to ground yourself. It's so many stories. So many stories. There's a story of Yosef in the pit. And he was like, in this pit, and it said, En bomaim, and there were scorpion and snakes. Like, the Torah is very holy. Why all this description? So the Rebbe teaches us that the brain is likened to the pit. If there's no water of Torah, then scorpion and snake-like thoughts, which thoughts then create emotions, and emotions then create reactions. So it starts with the modani, a foundation of, you know what? I'm grateful today. I was just watching this video. It was very cute. This man was interviewing these 2 people, and he actually said, if I would give you $1 million right now, would you be like the most happy? They're like, yeah. What if I told you I'd give you $10 million or $10 billion? Would you be even more happy? Nothing would let you change your mood. You'd just be happy, right? Nothing. You'd be like dancing. Yeah. And then he says, but what if I told you I'd give you the money and then your life would be over? Would you be happy to get that 10 billion? What's the point? So then he said, every day you woke up, you get your life again. Don't let anything make it unhappy. It's like you just got $10 billion with your life. More than even $10 billion without a life. This is how we have our foundation. This is why the prayers are so important. They did a research where they put bands on people's hands. And they said, one group, when you wake up in the morning, change the band. And it's not a Jewish, it was like a scientific research thing. And on the band is written gratitude. Think of what you have to be grateful for. Another group, the control group, just switch the band. 40 days later, the people who thought about what they were asked to think about, what they were grateful for, while they were just switching the band from one hand to the next, happy chemicals skyrocketed, cortisol, stress hormones got lowered, and they were overall so much happier. Didn't God tell us to start our day with modani and start our foundation with gratefulness and have an attitude of gratitude that we have another day? Can we just do a meditation and say, I'm not going to let anything change me today? As if I won $10 million. I wouldn't let the things around me change my happiness. I have my 10 zillion infinite soul back today to shine another smile to someone, to do a next extra kindness, even though I feel like they didn't deserve it and they didn't after they annoyed me. But I can carry the torch to be the example of what it is to be a loving, caring, compassionate person. Just like I have to be, and I have to train myself to be at peace with the process of my light more and more shining. And I know I carry the torch more than anyone. Hashem gave me Bina. Hashem gave me extra wisdom. Animal, man, and then a woman was created. And she was gifted more. She was gifted more to be able to help her soulmate. She was gifted more to help anchor the home with the light of her soul, with her extra wisdom. But if we're not doing what we need to do to keep our light shining, it's so easy to just get enmeshed, even for such holy reasons. It's so easy. And by the way, this kind of work is like, you have to dangle these kinds of information in front of your animal soul because it helps. Because like even recent research showed by Dr. Sarah Lazar, people who pray and meditate and learn, they studied their brains for 30 years. She took pictures of them. And the people that prayed and learned and did mindful exercises and learned new instruments and learned new other things like languages, actually, what normally happens to a brain when it's getting older, it gets smaller and smaller, physically. There's just, how you say, less self-mastery in some sense, because generally speaking, our rational mind works 3 to 4 times slower than our emotional part of our brain, the limbic part of our brain. So naturally, we're emotional. Naturally, Hashem commands us not to go after our heart's desire. Naturally, Hashem says you can do it to moach sholet al halev, that your brain will override the 3 times faster heart. And science has just proven it. When you do meditations, you can increase your brain power, the more rational part of your mind, so that it can override the emotions. And then it can go 3 to 4 times faster. That part of the brain that's more rational, that can think things through and not just like blah, 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 and get emotional and get triggered and just respond. And then, how did I behave that then? Oh, gosh, I can't believe I did it again. I just really didn't want to. I can't believe it. And then you're in a situation again. So this researcher showed, not only were there more neurotransmitters between the brain and cell communications of the heart, not only was the brain thickening, the cortex lining was thickening as these people were aging. Not only did they not have depression, anxiety, and all these kinds of problems compared to the control group that did not do this kind of learning and praying and meditating, it prevented them from having Alzheimer's, dementias, and Parkinson's, and all kinds of aging of the mind problems. But again, if it's blah, 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 you're not using your brain, you're chewing gum. It's not really, you know what I mean? So we have to, the key component, because you'll see a lot of people who prayed and learned, and, there's other factors, of course. But one of the main researches is that we can help prevent these diseases of the future by doing this kind of work. And we have the Torah teaching us this is going to be good for you today and forevermore. So, wow, I didn't look, but it doesn't look like the Zoom is going. But at least it's on Facebook, even though it looks like such a funny angle. Okay. So how do we shine our light? It's there. It's there. It's just a matter of doing the daily procedures, the spiritual practices, so it comes out. And that way we're protected from all the people around us that could I don't have to say again, end up changing us because we haven't grounded ourselves in that way. So the lights are shining. We just received 8 days of Gan Eden light. We just received so much holiness. And even if you didn't really feel it, and even if it's like it came and went and you're didn't trust me, you got a bigger light. Every mitzvah adds and adds. There's the teaching that says that the wise man's eyes is on his head. Such a holy book to say, well, of course everyone's eyes are on their head. Why say such a sentence in such a deep Kabbalistic book? So the Alter Rebbe brings it out in Tanya and says that the wise eyes man is always on his head to see, is this action I'm about to do allow the Shekhinah to rest on me or not? Because each act we do, hopefully holy and good, right, allows the oil and all the good deeds and all the Torah learning to seep in so that our Shekhinah can catch on fire. It's the Shekhinah resting on us that's causing us to be on fire. So his eyes are always on his head looking at the Shekhinah. Is this deed? Is this word? Is this going to bring unity of me and my Shekhinah, my personal Shekhinah, that wants to rest on me or not? And if it's not, they desist. They don't do it. Because that's how important it is to constantly realize that's how we keep shining. By each mitzvah. Now sometimes, trust me, trust me, it's such a filled day. It's such a filled days. Just even sometimes I remember no time even sometimes to feed yourself with all the demands. But I've done a test over the years. And I'm not saying do intermittent fasting that long, because it's not healthy. But compared to that 5 to 10 or 15 minutes of extra davening and learning to eating a little less, I'd go for make sure that you spiritually have the nutrition so that you're your best shining self. Even though, I've studied it elsewhere where this actually feeds your body so you're not as hungry. It actually nourishes you physically when you daven and learn. So it's a good diet plan. I mean, it's easy, to do that rather than go somewhere to wherever. But so the mitzvahs are really the containers of this holiness that's going to make us shine. The Alter Rebbe says in time, if you look at the mountains where it's so high up and there's no heat up there, that you're so close to the sun. And if you go to the valleys, I live in the valleys, and it's so hot there, and it's so the furthest distance from the sun. How come it's so hot there? Because the mountains don't have enough atmosphere to contain the heat. And the valleys, Hashem created with a lot of atmosphere so it contains the heat. Why? Maybe just for this reason. Because up in Shamayim, there's no Torah and mitzvahs to contain the Kedusha. Here, we have the atmosphere of the mitzvot that become the container to allow the light to shine within us. So I hope this message to you, don't change! Keep your light shining. Keep smiling by shining. And keep shining by smiling.
Do you believe it's easier for some people, this whole process? Some people just love learning. They love davening. And other people
definitely. First of all, for me, artistic people, maybe ADHD type of people, especially now in this day and age, I think the ADHD so-called, if you want to go under that term, it's very hard. It was very hard for me. If you knew me as a child, I was on skateboards, bikes, playing tennis, outdoors, hated reading, hated anything, didn't like sitting still. But now I do, actually. But that was my nature, to not sit still and be a very physically active person. And I really hated learning. And I even hated typing. Like, I just free. I want to be free. You know, some people are just more that way. So I tell people, if I could do it, you could do it. Because it's not about all these things. It's about your soul. Eventually, the outer layers of whoever took over, whether it's the nurture, whether it's the lack of nurture, whether it was the nature in the DNA of your soul, but that could be guided and channeled, whatever it is, the true you wants to vakus with Hashem. The true you wants to be in paradise. Because, like, opening a siddur is entering Gan Eden. Now, yes, it's a war going on, because the Yetzer Hara doesn't want you to win. But even Tanya says the Mashiach light is in the Siddur. Do you understand? You don't have to wait for Rosh Hashanah to access the Mashiach light when the shofar blows. The Alter Rebbe says it's Moichin de Gadlus time. It's a time to really increase your brain power during prayer. And Dr. Sarah Lazar proves it in her research. I mean, if you think about it, you're really thinking what you're training your brain to focus on this and not on that. And why do you want to have such a trained brain to focus on this and on that? Because when something's happening in your life and you can't clearly think it through, that's where you get in trouble. That's where your troubles begin. That's where the arguments come. That's where the separation comes with people. Thoughts create emotions. Emotions create reactions or inactions. So we got to sharpen our mind power. We got to override this heart that's pulsating with all these negative emotions. So we have our light. And we can be the example. And one of the last messages I want to say, or a few, I don't know how much time we have here, but we started so early. But I know you have a long way to get me back. But wait, ask your husband. But so... Again, the little oil. You might not feel like you have a brain to focus on davening. I'm all over the place. I'm ADHD. And I tell people, then you're the one that really has to daven. Like, you don't know how to ride a bike, then you really have to take lessons to learn how to ride a bike. Because the little oil, when you use it, God pours more and more into you miraculously. And unlike a gas tank that you can only pour in so much, and then it overflows, we have an infinite level of infinite God's wisdom that can be poured into our mind and poured into our heart to banish the darkness. We can't banish the darkness with a stick. If there's darkness, that means there's an absence of light. And if there's an absence of light, turn on the light. We just did, Hanukkah. So, ready? Ready to shine your light and to continue shining your light?
Yes.
Any questions?
You said that women like the Shabbos candles.
Because,
we don't like the
well, we can light the Hanukkah candles. It's not against us. I know many families that each member lights. And boy, there's so many lights.
like the women on? Or just because nobody
Yeah, many women like the menorah. I like, yeah. Sometimes because it's expensive for some families and not enough room on if you have a little place. But
I thought it was my women's list thing when I was.
no, yeah. Wow, I'm so happy you all came. I hope to reunite with people that I met through Facebook or from other lectures and friends bringing friends. I cannot thank you all enough. Yes, question.
It's a statement that Rabbi Y.Y. Jacobson said that in terms of what you were saying, that when you wake up in the morning, you were saying, when you say Modani, you start your day of gratitude. Well, he was saying that before you say Shema, think of the end of your day, think of one good thing that you did for the day, one good deed. Now, it so happens, you could be a mother of 6 or whatever it is, you don't have time in the day, and the day went on. If you didn't do one mitzvah, then even if it's making a phone call to check on someone who's sick, or
Beautiful.
one good thing to do before you go to bed, and then you say the Shema. So this way it allows you, Because
Beautiful.
you did one good thing and it just makes the
So-
next day better.
So now you talked about bedtime. Whoa, I
Not
have
bedtime yet.
almost before the end of the day. But it's very important as the Jewish calendar starts at night to do spiritual practices at night first. So that when you wake up, you can already wake up in a better mood, in a better space. Tanya talks about the fact that prayer is a ladder, and at night, all of your Torah mitzvos get planted in your brain and in your heart at night. So, doing the Shema Lamita, doing even 5 minutes of learning at night. That way you go to sleep like a chasida, you can wake up like a chasida. But really, what's going on? What happens? Your soul is going up to Shemayim. And you're taking all your Torah mitzvahs up to Shemayim. But if you don't do that preparation, then all your Torah mitzvahs don't get planted in your heart and in your mind. I mean, you get credit, I'm sure it'll save you from a lot of other things, but to have its effect on refining your mind and your heart, the nighttime spiritual practice is essential. Then next day's davening and learning is watering those seeds that were planted.
You know, yesterday there was a commitment, and one guy came over and said about the Lubavitch Rebbe that says about the shamash of the Chanukiah. And the shamash, יש לו יותר, he had a more important mitzvah of doing, of lighting the rest of the room. Without the shamash,
Right.
there is no light.
Right. And you remember when Aaron was lighting the real menorah in the Beit HaMikdash, although he could light it like this, there were steps. Oh, hopefully, I don't know, it might take a year, but I just submitted my next book, The Temple Within, to Mosaic Publishing. They accepted the book, so that's gonna be. But anyway, so I've been involved in that. So the 3 steps, or the steps going up, wasn't necessary, but it was necessary to teach us a lesson when you want to light someone else up, because each of the 7 different lights in the menorah of the Beit HaMikdash represent the 7 types of Jews. One more Chesidic, one more Gvordik, one more Tiferes. So when you're there to ignite and light another person in your life, you make sure you upraise yourself. Don't have the double standard. You're not this, you're not that, but you're not elevating yourself. That's a whole nother class. But a lot of that we'll hopefully do another event. Wow. Yeah.
Are any of these books for sale?
Yeah, so they're on Amazon. I just can't travel with, like in the days you used to be able to take 2 suitcases for free. But when you go from this place to that place to that place, and then you have to they charge you like 50 each, like suitcase, 50, becomes $1,000 if you go 3 places. So, and then you don't sell them, you have to pay them to get them back. So I had that kind of experience one time. I learned my lesson. No more. Yeah.
Do we go on Amazon? Do we put just Miriam? Do we put your name?
Yeah, or you can go to my website, yournewheights.com.
Oh, okay.
And you could see, I have like, Baruch Hashem, like 28 children's books. 1 Fire, Water, and Air, like we learned here. A lot of these Hasidic concepts in children's books. So women don't have to, or men, no one does have to wait till they're this age to get the information that has so helped me and help a lot of others. Baruch Hashem.
And,
I do have a question.
Yes.
You talk about the fire, water, air, and earth element.
Oh, I didn't talk about the air element, how to use it for the good.
But also,
Well, by praying and saying the words of prayer, and by saying the words of when you learn Torah. Yeah.
also, you talk about each one has a specific element that's unique to them.
Yeah, all of us have all 4.
Oh, that's what I was going to ask.
And
Is it-
but one person may have 1 more dominant or 4 all dominant. Like they are over depressed, they are over talkative, they are over eating, they're over angry. Like they have all 4. So that's like more gifts that God gave you to then be able to channel in a great and miraculous way, hopefully in a good way.
This was really an honor. and a pleasure to hear you talk. It's the first time I've heard you speak.
Oh, thank you. So
And so many things you say, and so many analogies are so really hit. very
Thank you.
significantly.
Thank
I
you.
love the different concepts. It really resonates. It's not something that I'm not going to be able to remember. It just really, we're able to pinpoint something that very much resonated.
Yeah, and everything I said is like in these books, and I have my classes on Your New Heights, and I have a YouTube channel, all free. Anyone who's a therapist who wants training for free to how to use this as a therapeutic model, you can go on my website. It's free there. You can. There's brain training for children, and there's also CBTT training, which is cognitive behavioral Torah therapy training, so that you can start to incorporate these godly like techniques or healing tools, whatever you want to call it, to help your clients as well in whatever field that you're in, actually. Yeah. So I have a health book, a prayer meditation. I have a marriage book, and there's a marriage workbook, but didn't make it here today. But it's on Amazon, and a mikveh book. The mikveh book, I have to say, is actually a very unique mikveh book. It's like meditative. And through going through the experience of cleansing your body, cleansing, really, but preparing is maybe a better word. You prepare yourself for intimacy by really clearing away a lot of the baggage so you can fully reunite that special night with your spouse. So, Baruch Hashem. And it's color pictures. It's, wow, it came out really nice, I have to say. The graphics, everything. So anyway, thank you. I want to put music on and dance. So, because the other night we were at this event, and some of you were there, and we all wanted to dance, but it was like hard to dance because it was all, outdoor and public. But if anyone wants to do a little, or more questions, the schmooze, and then maybe a dance.
I really want to thank you about the davening thing.
Yeah.
But somehow I don't do it in the morning. It somehow gets delayed.
Delayed.
I'm nervous the whole
Yes.
day. It's on my mind, and I don't relax until I finish. And especially if it's like in the afternoon already, I'm doing shakra.
Right.
So now I have to take it to heart.
Yeah, there's a teaching that says, and Lavan came in the morning, and so Lavan is the whiteness of Hashem. So the whiteness and the chesed and the blessings are in the morning. And if you delay, yeah. Yes. Yeah.
It's not just the job.
It's a little bit because there's a little background noise.
I read very slow.
Oh.
Okay, and I read each letter. So I said to my daughter, but I can't read the whole thing. I'll be today
I know.
reading. So she said, but mommy, you know what you do? You are better than the one that do.
Yeah, exactly.
Because each word you are reading
Yes.
and you are understanding.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
I'm gonna ask you say that everyone, I'm old fashioned, I don't know internet, I don't know nothing about it. But all I know is that my house is my temple. I pray.
And our bodies are
I pray. I believe a lot in Kabbalah. I was born Friday night, the first day of Hanukkah, in Augusta. So Friday night, I was told that if I leave this world, the Friday, I go out to heaven. And when my mother had 3 boys to a girl, she was Adasa hospital, not existed. She was the birth lady in Safran, and people go with a torch celebrating first of Hanukkah. So my mother and my friend say I'm the miracle baby.
You are the miracle baby, the Hanukkah miracle baby.
Yeah, but I want to say that analogy that things that happen to you, the children of bad experience, it's there, you want to forget it, but it's there the whole life. Like when you're in a tender woman, you think about the past.
But when you fill up your mind more and more, I promise you, I used to have so much in my mind. Now it's gone almost, because more and more you fill up your mind with positive knowledge of Torah.
But I always go back. I always go back to teach about the
Right,
past.
but it's a matter of training your brain to live the moment and live even to the future of Mashiach.
Right.
Like always thinking ahead, always thinking.
I made the
If anything, positivity of what
I
will
made
be.
the rabbi twice. I lived there.
Wow.
I should take a picture of
Maybe
them.
we should close this 1 second. Bye-bye. Any questions, actually? Oh, 1 second before I'll say goodbye, everyone. Thank you for joining. I know it's a lot of review for you, but it was a totally new crowd. So I hope the review was good for you as well. Bye-bye.